Welcome into the Morning Glory Show. I am your host, Jake Robertson. Make sure you're checking us out on all socials. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, retweet, everything. But today, we are joined by our first guest ever on the show, and it's a guest to behold. He brings the beef, but he's got that cheddar. The Maestro Minestrone, the marinara mobster of food reviews, the Yankee Candle scoundrel, the vanilla thriller from Vanilla. They call him the Big Natural, Stoney Keeley. Welcome to the show.
Man, happy to be here, Jake. I think that's the best intro I've ever gotten on any podcast before. So I'm flattered. I'm honored.
I think it's well earned, and we're also joined by Jonathan Miller as well, host of the All Things Titans. And follow Stoney on all socials as well, at Stoney Keeley or at the SoBros Network. You can follow me at Glory Days Sports. How are you doing today, Jonathan?
Good. Really excited. We're getting closer and closer to the draft. We just closed what is probably the most historic Titans first wave of free agency of all time. So we have a lot of exciting things to talk about.
I totally. Yeah, we're really shifting our focus back from free agency to this draft. We've filled a lot of holes, specifically on the cornerback side. We haven't talked about it here on this show because it happened literally the day after we recorded, and that is the Titans signed L'Jarius Sneed, maybe one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL at this point in time. 4 years, $76 million, $55 guaranteed, $20 million signing bonus. Played the second most snaps out of the entire NFL from the quarterback position last season. One snap behind Cam Sutton. We talked about the knee injury. Do you see that as a concern, Stoney?
No, not at all, because I think that, like you said, like this is a guy that still played a ton of snaps in 2023. You trust that the medical evaluation process checks out. The Titans are comfortable with that, or else I don't think you trade for him. I don't think you give him the compensation that they did. If you have questions about that knee, I think a lot of the questions about his practice schedule are a little overblown. And I think this is a guy that can get out there and play and can make the secondary pretty damn good on paper.
I think the Titans might have the best cornerback room in the entire NFL at this point in time. And I think Rand Carthon, he just loves his guys with no knees. We brought in Tyjae Spears last season. Chidobe Awuzie obviously paired up with Sneed, tore his ACL in 2022 and was recovering his neck this past season and was still getting back to fully healthy, it looked like out there. But we're bringing in leadership. We're bringing in dogs. And I think you take that 1-2-3 punch and pair it against this AFC South, and there's not a receiving core out there that I'm really fearful of at this point in time. But there's still a lot of holes left to fill out here in free agency and through the draft. And I'm excited to have you on the show today, just because when we're talking draft in general, you're one of the big three in Titans media that I look up to, and that's you, James Foster, Justin Mello, three dudes that I just trust. Tell us about just what's kind of your process. How do you start the draft season? How do you build out your big board? How do you make these grades?
Yeah, so I actually don't do grades. I am pretty hardcore just tape study, and it is what's on the tape. I don't even like. I'm working with Zach on stacking the inbox. I feel like we pair really well together because he gets into a lot of the stats and the analytics and that sort of stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, what's on the tape? So we've got a good balance there. Yeah. I'm really stacking the inbox.com. But, I really, it's really a free flowing process for me. I kind of just watch who I feel like watching that day. It's like, oh, you know what? I need to get a couple more games of Johnny Newton in before the draft. Let me just sit down on my lunch break and just pound that out real quick. But I try to watch at least 3 games of every prospect that I write about. And I start forming my board together with some of the consensus top 32 players around June. And I start getting those pieces into place for the season. I try not to overdo it on the previous season's tape because the upcoming season is obviously still a major part of that, but I'll try to get a couple of games in on the first round prospects throughout the summer, kind of get my board set based off of that, and then just add prospects as I feel like it, as I'm able to watch more tape. But I don't I don't write a true eval of a prospect until I've watched at least 3 games.
Stoney, I really liked what you guys, you and Zach did at the Senior Bowl. Talk to us a little bit about like the work that goes into the Senior Bowl and your evaluation process that week.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy. It's kind of a blur. We were joking. I can't remember with who, but on the last day we were kind of like, we were doing a show from the press box, and we were kind of like, you know what? This is like the 12th show that we've done this week, and they just kind of looked at us like dumbfounded, like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, what are you guys doing? You're maniacs. But it's a grind, and it is something that I think if you go down and you can take seriously, because there are a lot of people that go down there and it's like a networking event, and you see people literally with their back to practices sometimes, and it's kind of unfathomable to me, because I'm like, how can you go on your major program and just talk about what's happening? The big thing last year was everybody swooning over Jake Hayner, and we were like, no, Tyson Bagent's been the best quarterback down here all week. So to go down there and do it right, at least in my opinion, you're getting up. For us, we're getting up, we're doing a morning show, we're talking about what we're looking forward to seeing that day, and then I'm sitting in the bleachers taking meticulous notes. Like, my notebook is just pure chicken scratch. Just, I'm looking for anything that I can basically latch onto with a prospect. But I'm also looking at who in the individual position drills is getting coached up and what they're getting coached up on. You know, I saw the coaches that week working with Tyler Guyton quite a bit. And I know, like, if you guys have watched him, he's a prospect that kind of needs a lot of work, but to see him get in there and apply those changes in real time in practice, kind of, you check a box, right? Like, this guy seems coachable, seems willing to work on what he's doing. And so you're watching practice. This year, practice started at like 9:30 or 10 o'clock or something like that. One team practices for 2 hours. They take a 30-minute break. You can go down on the field, interview players, all that. And then they do the other practice. And then we go home, and then we do another show, and then we write articles, and then we plan for the next day, and maybe have a few libations as well, you know, a few adult beverages back at the Airbnb. But that's it. You wake up and you do it all over again, and it's just a constant blur for like 4 or 5 days in a row. And then you come back, and I've got this notebook now with like 70 player evaluations that I've got to type up and get to the readers. So it's a blur, but I love it, man. I love living that lifestyle. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I think you put it very well. I think it's what a lot of casual fans might not understand. I mean, the combine gets all the hype. Obviously, they're sponsored by Noble now, and it's got a lot of eyes on it. But from a talent evaluation, you're really just looking at the tape and wanting to confirm what you saw on tape with the combine. You're not making big changes from that. But come to the Senior Bowl, the East West Shrine, the Hulu Bowl, you can really see some of these either underclassmen now, which is new this season, or guys from smaller schools go against some of this top competition throughout the draft process. You might not have got to see that on their actual tape. So the Senior Bowl is probably one of my most important aspects, what I take into account for my grades. If you show out there, I think you might be able to contribute more at the next level. So that's kind of how I view it. But I think everything sounds awesome. Today we are going to be talking more draft, of course. So if you're on the mock draft simulators, and I've done 10,000 at this point in time, you hit go on any platform, PFF, NFL Draft Fanatics, the Draft Network, any of those, it's going to drop down to 7, and usually one of Joe Alt, Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, or Marvin Harrison Jr. are going to be on the board. And we're going to see that throughout this coming into the draft. Those are going to be the names that you see out there from all draft media for the Titans, I really think. But we wanted to give you guys just a little taste of some of the other prospects out there, and wanted you to be at least aware of them just in case the Titans do go a different direction. So I want to start with you, Stoney. Give us just one guy that you see the Titans could potentially go at 7, maybe a guy you're a little bit higher on, And why would you why could you be talked into going that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the other offensive linemen. I kind of feel like people are really overthinking Olu Fashanu right now. He's still one of the best offensive line guys that I've ever scouted. And I don't know if there's, to me, I feel like there's got to be something more going on with him. The reason he's falling, because the hand size, people claim, oh my gosh, tiny hands, can't draft him. And he's falling down into, I've seen mock drafts that have him now around 18 to 20. And there's just like, what has happened there? I don't see that. I would still be fine with Fashanu at 7th overall because of the tape, and baby hands don't show up on tape when I watch him. So I'm sorry, I don't see it, guys. I don't know why the sky is falling for Fashanu. I would be fine with him. I would also be fine. It sounds like they're kind of poking around JC Latham as well. And these guys these days are prepared and open to the idea of switching to the left side. JC Latham, Talisi Fuaga as well. Both of these guys are really, really good, clean prospects that, hey, the Titans just need tackle help. They need 2 tackles right now. And if Alt's off the board, I'm going to be happy with any of the 3. And maybe you can switch Latham. I've seen people suggest that you can move Fuaga to the left side as well. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with any of those 3 if Alt is off the board. But to throw you a name out there, I'm gonna feed the propaganda machine and say Dallas Turner. I think he's my edge rusher 1 in this class. I can at least see the vision behind taking an edge rusher at 7th overall, because it is a need for this team. And whereas you could look at the tackle class and you could reasonably say, you know what, if we pass on a tackle here, we can get a guy at 38. This is a really deep offensive tackle class. We might be able to get a guy in the 4th round that's going to be starting for us week 1. With the edge class, you have the top couple of guys, and to me, it feels like it just falls off a cliff after that. So I could at least see the reasoning saying, hey, let's get one of these premium edge rushers and get him in there, check that box. And then, you know what? We're fine at edge rusher. We can build wide receiver, offensive tackle depth in the later rounds of this draft. Titans Twitter would be rioting in the streets, but I think if they were to take Dallas Turner, I don't think I'd be complaining about it.
Yeah, I think when you think about just the premier positions in football, obviously quarterback stands in a tier above itself, but then it gets to the guys that can you get after that pass thrower? Can you block for him? Can you catch for him? But I think having somebody on the edge might make the biggest difference opposed to any other position in the NFL opposed to quarterback. But getting to you, Jonathan, who's your one guy?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I had Olu Fashanu as well, and I share the same sentiment as Stoney. I don't understand the fall. People are talking about like the hand size thing. If you watch this guy's tape, his grip strength is insane. Like if he gets his paws on you, he's got you. So like I understand like if you want to break down his game and the nuances of the small things, like is he certain run schemes like getting to the second level or zone blocking is little struggles from time to time, but I mean, that's if you're being super nitpicky. Like this guy is him and Alt are far and away the best tackles in this draft. Are blue chip, plug them in, you're good to go type of guys. But for the sake of being different and going in a different direction, I'm going to talk about a guy that I'm going to be clear. I think the Titans should either trade down or take one of these receivers. I'm pretty firm on that. But let's say that trading down is not an option. And let's say that these guys that we've listed, like the big 3 receivers and the tackles are not there. The guy that I would look at is Brock Bowers. I'm not, to be clear, I'm not super high on Brock Bowers, but I think it's because there's so much talent in this top 10 that I think we're kind of getting like talent fatigue a little bit, where we evaluate Brock Bowers and we go, wow, he's phenomenal. But in comparison to the tackle and the wide receiver and the quarterbacks that you can only squeeze so many guys into the top 10. So naturally the tight end position, as not a premium, at least in the top 10 or 15, he's going to slide. But if the Titans absolutely had to pick, there were no trade options, the tackle and the receivers were gone, I would be okay with adding some serious talent to the roster like Brock Bowers. Now, I will say on the Dallas Turner side, I'm not opposed to it, but I think that it would not be a good pick in that position, only because looking at pick 38, it's really important. Like, draft strategy is huge, right? So Rand Carthon and team are taking a look at their board and saying, okay, if we take position A at pick 7, then where does that put us with selecting other positions in need at 38? And when you take in all the evaluations on my side, when you take an edge at 7, which you're getting the best edge player at 7, when you look at 38, you have a couple of directions you can go, but if you have to go tackle, huge drop off. If you have to go receiver, in some instances, you're kind of reaching a little at 38, like a little too soon. So you kind of just put yourself in an awkward position. So I think edge at 38 is interesting to me because there's a couple of guys who, if they fall, would be chef's kiss, right? So I kind of like that idea better. So yeah, in this scenario, I would say if those premium positions, those premium players are gone, then I would you could talk me into Bowers at 7 making sense.
Yeah, I think I could be talked into either players. With Bowers, it's such an interesting thing because he gets compared to Kyle Pitts just because he went just a couple years ago, another generational athlete. But what Bowers was doing in the SEC is unprecedented. He was dominating at 17 and the best of the best in college football. And I don't think that can be understated. And the tight end position, I think, does knock him. But I think if you viewed him as just a movable weapon, a slot receiver, even, I think it could only help. Dude's an athlete. He's
going to be a matchup nightmare at the next level. So, whether he lands with Indianapolis or Seattle or wherever he ends up going, Cincinnati, he's going to fall into a situation where he is going to be a nightmare matchup. And I think his length and his ability to kind of high point balls, he's just a stud. He really is. So no, I agree with you. I think it's the fact that he's a tight end kind of puts this gross, taste back in everybody's mouths of, oh, Kyle Pitts hasn't quite worked out. But yeah,
Jonathan, to your point, man, about this wide receiver class, it's a really deep class, but there are 4 guys in it that I look at as bona fide difference makers. Your wide receiver ones, week 1, they're out there playing, and then there's wide receiver 3 candidates in the NFL. So yep. I think at 38 right there, it really is a tricky spot where if you were to go receiver there, I feel like there are a lot of this class would be reaches at that point. And I think a lot of these guys are going to shine on down the depth chart a little bit.
I think what's most likely going to happen is that we're going to get to pick 38 and one of these first round players are going to fall. The Titans are going to be sitting at 38. And here's something that's not getting talked about really. We're talking about trading down at 7. What about trading down at 38? That might be a really, really solid option for them because in all these mock drafts that I've been kind of doing on the back end, there's always some talent that falls, whether it's a Byron Murphy or a Chop Robinson or Darius, one of these guys are going to fall to 38. Yeah, Kevin Dodd. Yeah. That turned out great. One of these guys are going to fall. And then Titans are going to be making a decision that's probably just best player available at a position that might not be necessary. The other thing is, do you look at a Peyton Wilson, a linebacker situation, even though that kind of feels a little too soon. So the Titans are going to be faced with a really interesting decision to make at 38. And you might just have to take the best blue chip player you can find at 7 and then hope to just find talent at 38.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out one that I have not seen ever in a Titans mock draft. And I haven't seen him talked about at all on Really Titans media in general. And before this past week, it may have made a little bit more sense. And that just kind of matters where you see this guy as a positional standpoint. But I'm going with the former Iowa 100-meter and long jump champion. This white man can literally jump. And that's Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. I don't care if you see him as a cornerback or a safety. Obviously, you could use both. you need a CB4, and ultimately to somebody who can take over in the future. He can step in as safety one from day one. And when I look at just Iowa secondary in general that transitioned into the NFL, I would hate to have a guy like Micah Hyde, Geno Stone, Desmond King, Amani Hooker even. I mean, he's got the size, he's got the instincts, he's got the intellectuals that you're looking for. He's got the physical standpoint, I think. And when there's some guys you just watch on tape and they just kind of have that it factor. They're around the football all the time. I think that's Cooper DeJean. Personally, if I'm looking at him as just a corner standpoint, I have him a little bit further down this, but I could see the scenario where he comes out and is the best corner or best secondary player in this entire draft. So I just wanted to throw that name out there on him. And he can punt return as well, according to Chef Ran. And he's got some return skills. And obviously, we don't have a lot of that at all. But you guys have any thoughts on Cooper DeJean?
I personally think that DeJean is like the safetiest of all safeties.
Yep.
Like a lot of zone coverage, wasn't tested in man a whole lot, but I think that's something that will translate to a position switch for him. I was going to mention the punt return ability too. He adds that dynamic. He had the big one. Oh gosh, I can't remember who it was against, but the tic-tac foul call that called it back that would have won Iowa that game. Just simply electric. I mean, he is a playmaker. I like him a lot as a safety. I've got him as the best safety in the class on my my board. So I mean, listen, you could easily talk me into that. I don't think it's too wild at all, Jake.
Not at 7, you can't. Nope.
No.
I'm throwing my hands up. I'm flipping my table at 7.
Would I be happy? No, not even a little bit. Especially with how the board falls. But I could be talked into it before the season, and if those camp reports come out and he's just thriving, I'd be over the moon. I could be talked in just about anybody, honestly. If he's
going to be a great pro. I mean, no doubt he's going to be a good pro. I just don't. At 7, you got, especially in this draft class, you gotta get a guy that is blue chip, no doubt. And Titans will. I think we're kind of playing in like fantasy land where it's like, okay, in the 5th worst case scenario, who would you pick? So they're in a good spot.
All right. Well, we kind of talked about the guys that aren't talked about at 7. Let's say Titans don't go tackle in the first. They don't get Olu. They don't get Joe Alt. They don't go Talisi or any of those guys, the big 5. Who are some of the guys in the 2nd round that the Titans could draft potentially that could fill in and not maybe start early, but play very early and could contribute to this team? We went ahead and started with you last time, Stoney. Let's go ahead and start with you today, Jonathan.
Yeah. So, we were kind of talking about it a little bit before the show, and the tackle position is one of those positions where there's a ton of talent. But if you're the Tennessee Titans with a massive need at left tackle where you kind of desperately need a guy to come in straight away and be ready to play, that's when, looking at pick 38 is a little scary, right? Because, there's a couple of guys to me that are kind of like your fringe early 2nd round, mid 2nd round guys that would be great. But one guy in particular that I am a pretty big fan of is Kingsley Suamatea.
Portland just put it up in the chat.
Yeah, so Kingsley, now all 3 of those guys, like just to run through them, I had Jordan Morgan, Tyler Guyton, and Patrick Paul on there too, like who are all kind of in the same tier. But I think Kingsley makes a ton of sense for the Titans. Now, the funny thing, the first thing I said to Jake this morning was like, okay, I'm doing my player evaluations for these like 2nd round-ish tackles, and I'm looking at my notes, and almost the notes are almost similar for every single player, where it's just like, strong, quick hands, solid footwork, struggles in the run game a little bit, and is a guy who kind of needs some time to develop. So I'm just like, if we're looking at this at 38 and one of these guys has to be our starter, we might be in trouble. But the one thing I will say is that the Titans have some flexibility here, and they don't have to go tackle, because if they do have to take a Kingsley Suamatea, Tyler Guyton, a Jordan Morgan, one of these guys that needs a little bit of time, who will certainly develop well under Bill Callahan, it's okay, because if they have to, they could go after the draft, they could go sign a David Bakhtiari, a Mekhi Becton, Andres Pete, like one of these guys who can come in and be your stopgap and allow maybe a season, half a season to develop into a kind of a more solid and more experienced left tackle. So I say Kingsley is not necessarily on the top of that list for me. I really like Tyler Guyton and his athleticism, and he's just got the frame for it. Like, he's perfect. Like, the body is good. He just needs to work on the in between the ears part. And thankfully we have a legendary coach that can help him do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Kingsley Sumatia is one of the guys I've been super high on ever since really the draft process started. Very, very athletic. Bruce Feldman's freak list guy this past season. Played well at the Senior Bowl, I thought. He was kind of hot and cold. I think it was day 2. I saw him give up back-to-back sacks against, I think it was Latu and somebody else. May have been Darius Robinson, if I remember correctly. But I think all the traits are there. Cousin to Penei Sewell, love that. Got that dog in him. Got it in his blood. I think he could come in very early and start for you. And he's got the versatility. Played right tackle 2 years ago, I believe, and then kicked out the left tackle this past season. So he's still learning the position too. So this is a guy I'm super high on. How about you, Stoney? Who's your one guy?
Well, first of all, if Zach's watching this, he's probably shaking his fist at me because you asked me for one guy and I gave you 4 to begin with. I'm notorious for that. So I'll try
to do the same thing.
I'll try to keep that reined in. I tend to do that from time to time. I'm with you guys on Sua Matea. I had a really bad first impression of him because I started with the Texas game, which was apparently like his absolute worst game in 2023.
You got to watch the Oklahoma tape.
I watched the Oklahoma tape. Yeah, that was one. I was talking with our buddy James Foster down at the Senior Bowl, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I really like this tackle out of BYU. And he said, oh, you know, we're talking about the Texas game. He's like, go watch the Oklahoma game and get back to me. And yeah, I watched the Oklahoma game. I'm like, okay, I get it. And then I watched a couple more and was like, yeah, that Texas game kind of feels like an outlier on his tape. So I'd be on board with that. I also, for me, I kind of think that at this point we're overthinking Patrick Paul a little bit. I love the length. I love the hand size. Really good pass protector. And the fee of getting guys that excel in pass protection and coaching them to run block is a pretty safe practice in today's NFL. And I love the size. I think, you know, the questions about him in run blocking are about his tenacity and, you know, his technique, lowering the boom, getting the pads down, foot drive, that sort of stuff. But you see it from time to time on the tape. I just watched the Texas San Antonio tape for Paul on Sunday, and I'm like, this dude's good enough. This guy is passable in run blocking that we're just kind of looking at the holes in some of these prospects and just getting hung up on them. But I talked about the point I made about the Senior Bowl earlier is watching who is getting the coaching and who is improving. I thought Paul was one of those guys that was getting a little bit of coaching, and you could tell like the coaching staff that was on hand was like, this guy, there's something there. They were exuberant to work with this guy because of the physical skill set. And I thought that he was doing a pretty good job of applying the technique changes they were showing him and winning reps. So I'm thinking, to go back to what we talked about earlier, he's checked that box. I think he's a coachable prospect. He is a freak athletically. He's an established, proven pass protector that maybe the mean streak isn't as evident on the tape, but I think the more you watch, the more you see it in flashes. And I think you can teach him to run block. Probably not going to have a good rookie season if you tried him out there at left tackle from week 1, but I like the upside with Patrick Paul. And I think sometimes we kind of get hung up on a prospect's weakness, and I think that's what's happening here at this point because he has improved throughout the draft process, if you ask me.
Oh, definitely. And all the physical traits are there. He's definitely got the length. He's got the size. He's got what you're looking for. The anchor does scare me a little bit, but I think it's fixable. And he just hasn't faced a whole lot of top competition. Still young as well. If I'm looking at 38, and honestly, those are probably my 2 guys that I prefer over this next group. One that might actually be gone by 38 is Graham Barton at a Duke. Versatile dude, played left tackle the whole past season, I think his entire career at Duke, but he has the ability to kick into guard or even center. So you got that versatile dude there. But I wanted to throw out just another wild card. And that's we're going to take a little trip to Connecticut. And we're going with Christian Haynes. The right guard out of UConn. This is a guy that I love this guy's tape. I have a first round grade on him.
He's insane.
He's a bully. But when you think guard kicking out to tackle, and probably right tackle is what I'm talking here, he's short. On that level, I think he was like a 0.12 out of 10 on his relative athletic score for height. He's 6'2", almost 6'3". But when you worry about that, you worry about wingspan and length. He's got 33.5-inch arms, which is passable for me. So little squatty body, low man wins in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as like athletic testing, elite speed score, 1.75 10-yard split. That's what I'm looking at when I'm looking out there at the tackle. 33-inch vert. He's got that dog. Only 3 sacks allowed. Over nearly 1,300 pass snaps over the past season. So he's proven, and he's scheme versatile. He fits very well in his zone-based scheme, but I think he can also play in gap. So definitely a wild card there. But if he doesn't work out at right tackle, you can put him at right guard. And I think he has all-pro potential there. This dude, he's a dog, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's the guy that Jordan Jefferson swung the helmet at the Senior Bowl. And if I'm not mistaken, he told Jefferson, if you're scared, go to church. And I'm like, that's
quote of the Senior Bowl.
Yeah. So I like him. I think he's probably the best pure guard in the draft, honestly. I've got Graham Barton listed higher than him, but I think that's just because of the versatility that Barton offers. But if you're talking about a guy
played tackle.
Yeah. If you're talking about a guy that just you watch him and you're like, man, that guy commands the position. You don't have to do any projection of what he would look like kicking inside the guard. You see it, you know it. And I don't have an issue at all with somebody taking Christian Haynes in the first round.
No, I don't either. I think
and matter of fact, Jake, I saw your big board that you posted on Twitter around that time, and I saw Christian Haynes like up in the 20s somewhere, and I was like, all right, Jake is a ball knower. Jake knows what he's talking about. He's on it.
It's a guy that every time I look at him, I'm like, I gotta raise him higher. It's him and JPJ are the inside linemen that I just absolutely love. And Zach Frazier, I think he's kind of that next step down, but I love his tape too. But I think those are 3 guys that you could potentially bring into the second round that could play tackle pretty early, and you're going to have longevity there. But we're going to shift here in a minute. But if you guys are checking us out on YouTube, comment section is blowing up. We got over 500 viewers on live. If you're on Twitter, make sure you hit retweet, and then go to YouTube and subscribe. Do all the things for us. We appreciate it. We're trying to grow this channel. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. We're getting close. Let's make it happen today. But Stoney, you got some player comps that you've posted. I started seeing them last season. I don't know if you've been doing them longer than that.
No, just the last 2 seasons.
Okay. So they're the best in the game. And we're going to throw some of these up here on the screen. I got 6 of them for us, and we're just going to scroll through them, and we're just going to let you dive into them. And the first one is pretty easy because we've already talked about the guy, and that's Patrick Paul. Patrick Paul is the guy who grabs you by the shirt and lifts you in the air before he bullies you. Just want to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, that was after I watched the UTSA game, and I'm just like rep after rep. I see Patrick Paul, like elbows bent, hands inside, getting on a guy, and just like it. I swear, like I wish I could have zoomed in because I'm like, this guy's feet have to be coming off the ground, and that's what it reminded me of over and over. It's like you see in the movies. I couldn't find a good photo of it, so I got the stock photo listed there, but it reminds me of the movies when the bully just grabs you by your shirt and lifts you up in the air. And I'm like, that's Patrick Paul. That's the comparison. Patrick Paul is the guy who grabs you by the shirt and lifts you in the air before he bullies you.
I love it. And Patrick Paul at 38, I'm all in. If you can get him there, amazing. PFF has him ranked as like 70th, 80th player overall. I mean, there's been I've done trade downs and got him in the 3rd. Obviously, I think he's going to go in the 2nd. And I mean, in the talk during the Senior Bowl, there was talk of him going borderline first.
Yeah.
He might be tackle 5-6 on a lot of teams' boards. So if you get him at 38, super happy. We're going to scroll down here, and this might be my favorite one. Picture is very blurry, but that is JJ McCarthy is pineapple pizza. And I know where I think I know where you're trying to allude this to, but I want to hear it from your words.
Yeah, pretty simple. He is a really divisive prospect. I think if you love JJ McCarthy, you really, really love JJ McCarthy. And if you hate JJ McCarthy, you really, really hate JJ McCarthy. And it just reminded me when I was I'd finished his evaluation and I'm sitting there thinking about it. And I'm like, what else is like this? And I think about every time you mention pineapple on pizza, it riles people up on Twitter. So I'm like, you know what? JJ McCarthy is pineapple on pizza.
Yeah. I'm in the middle here. So I love pineapple on pizza, but I am not a fan of JJ McCarthy.
Oh, okay.
So JJ, he's very intriguing. He's very hard to scout just because he's not asked to do a lot. And it's kind of similar to the CJ Stroud last year, where he has all this talent around him. And it's kind of hard to decipher, is it the talent that's doing this or is it him? I think overall, he's a great leader. He's going to go in the first round very high, probably in the top 7. If tied straight down.
Hope so.
Hopefully.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be the big 4, and I think he is the 4th, but I think he's on the lower end. I have a 3rd round grade on him early, and I haven't really moved that since we drove more into this process. But he's an athlete too. I think that's underaccounted for. A lot of people see him out back there in the pocket, but dude can move. Dude can move. You have any thoughts on that, Jonathan, as far as JJ goes?
Well, I think the comparison is pretty spot on. I think, but the JJ McCarthy hype, yeah, I don't quite get it. I think I do understand that, this is the same thing that we run into every year for the NFL draft, right? There's always a player that rises up the board where people are like, "Are you sure? I don't know." And JJ McCarthy is the one this year. I think this is mostly Harbaugh's fault, to be completely honest with you. But yeah, I don't think JJ McCarthy here. This is my thing. When I'm evaluating quarterbacks, if I have to see the quarterback be the reason why they win games, and then I go, okay, you can do that at the next level, you can qualify as a franchise quarterback. If you're not doing that, and people are saying, like I've seen like Dan Orlovsky, for example, a couple other national media guys go, it doesn't matter that he hasn't thrown and hasn't been the reason why his team wins. Like he just manages the game and X, Y, blah, blah, blah. It's like all the talent is there, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, well, when you're a top athlete competing, like, of course the skills are there, but the difference is you need to show us that you can do it. And, I don't really like the CJ Stroud comparison because Stroud showed us he could do it. I was really high on CJ Stroud last year. I desperately wanted the Titans to trade up to 3 to get him. And then it didn't matter. But yeah, so my problem with JJ is that he hasn't been, as the quarterback, you have to be the reason why you win, not the opposite, right? Like you can't be just there and then your teammates kind of carried you through. Like you have to elevate your team when it matters the most. And he won, he's a winner, but he was also a part of a really successful program and had a ton of talent around him. So, I just have to see it. So personally, is he a first rounder? I don't necessarily think so. He's definitely going to get taken in the first round. But I don't think we're going to see him in the top. Something tells me this is all smokescreen. Something tells me he's like a pick 13, pick 12 type of player. So we'll see.
I honestly think we could see Bo Nix or Michael Penix go a lot higher than we're expecting right now. And those are guys that I have right next to each other. And I have them both above JJ. So we'll see. And like Stoney alluded, it's pineapple on pizza. Some teams are going to love him and some teams are going to hate him. But it only takes one team. It only takes one team to draft him. So next up, this is my favorite one. And this actually comes from our friend Zach Lyons at F Words Pod. And this is Xavier Leggett is Muscle SpongeBob. And this is a guy that I've been a little bit lower on than consensus really since the beginning. But when I see this, and Stoney can correct me if I'm wrong, but Muscle SpongeBob looks great. He's a physical threat, but he's very soft. And he ends up peeing his pants at the end of this episode if you're SpongeBob fans. So got the looks.
Xavier
what you're
Legette
looking
peed his
for.
pants a couple times last year also. So
Yeah. So he's a physical dominant breed, built like a freaking Clydesdale, and runs like one too. But when you look at him after the catch, he looks like SpongeBob. He runs like Tarzan, but also gets tackled like Jane. Is what I'm going to say there. You see it any differently, Stoney?
No, and I think, you know, that was a prospect that I really wanted to show out at the Senior Bowl, and a lot of the hype going into that week was, hey, this guy's going to steal the show, and he didn't for whatever reason. I don't know if there were some injury concerns, something he was working through that maybe he wasn't quite 100%, but then you watch the tape, and this guy that has this reputation for being this big physical wide receiver, I kind of felt like Nate Wiggins in the Clemson game kind of bodied him at the point of his break a couple of times, and Nate Wiggins is like tiny. So I'm like, this big physical dude is getting jammed up by this corner that looks like he's like half of his frame. That's kind of a concern for me when the name of your game is supposed to be that physicality. Now, I know the RAS is good. The athletic testing was pretty good. After watching the Clemson game, I went and watched the Florida game, and I thought he was pretty good. He shows flashes of climbing the ladder to get the ball, pluck it out of the sky, being a bit of a nifty runner in the open field. But I've kind of softened my stance on him a little bit, but I still think he's a prospect that people are really really taking the hype and running with it.
Yeah, I think definitely. With Xavier, I watched quite a bit of his tape recently too, and I said the same thing. I actually messaged our group chat and was like, guys, am I missing something? Because Xavier Legette, like, he looks like he's as advertised, but yeah, there were several games where he is not playing to his size. Like, yeah. And I think that, you know, maybe is it because he's a little less technically sound than a Nate Wiggins and just kind of loses in those, you know, technical matchups. But even in those moments where he's getting through, like he's at his break and he needs to separate, you have the size, get your paws on him, right? Do something, right? So yeah, there was a couple of times where I was uninspired or unimpressed, but other moments in his game where I thought he did really well. Now, I'm a big proponent of the Senior Bowl. Like, if a lot of times talent will show out, like Tajay Spears really jumped off the page to me last year, and he ended up being as good as he showed us. Patrick Paul will probably do the same. But for Xavier Legette, you know, it's like when he's testing and put in these like tight moments, he's not really showing us much. But in games, on tape, he's pretty good. So I think that Xavier's probably like a third round guy. He's probably lower than some of these other guys in terms of, you know, would you take him? Where would you kind of rank him? But, you know, maybe in the fourth round. Like, I doubt he falls to the fourth round. He's probably taken in the third or maybe early third. But if he fell to the fourth, that would be a phenomenal spot for him for the Titans. So I like Xavier. I just think he's not quite as polished. Like you said, like, does he just need somebody to be like, bro, do you see how big you are? Don't let him do that to you in like half of the games.
He needs the Eddie George conversation that Derek
exactly. But yeah, I mean, I have a middle third round grade on him. So I don't hate him. I just don't like him at 38. I think it's just an overdraft, and I don't even know, 17 other receivers higher than him. So it's just a reach, in my opinion. But we'll go ahead. We'll scroll down just a little bit more. And this is one that I saw and I'm fascinated by because I have no idea what it means. But Frank Crum out of Wyoming, the tackle, if I can remember correctly, is the Wendigo. You have to dive into this one, Stone.
The Wendigo. The Wendigo is a legend present in many different regional folklore, but the general idea is the Wendigo hides in the woods, calls to you. You go in. It needs to eat people in order to live. So it eats people for sustenance. But it is like this lanky, like I don't want to say misshapen, but like misshapen creature that just kind of looks foul, but can move and capture people and ultimately, you know, consume their bodies. So I looked at Frank Crum at the combine, and I've watched a little bit of Frank Crum, and I'm like, here's this big athletic like weird looking dude that just eats people. So he's the one to go.
I love it. I haven't dived into Frank Crum just yet. What were you gonna say, Jonathan?
He looks like your second grade best friend's mom.
that hair though.
Yeah.
No, I love that. I love
she's
it.
mad you're eating all of her snacks when you come over after school, you know?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll go and dive in. We got 2 more here. So we got Talisi Fawanga, silent N. We learned here very recently, and that name is Michael Myers. Love this because if he gets to you, it's over.
Yes.
Game over. And then there's been talk about it, like we alluded to earlier. He might want to kick out to left tackle, get that big paycheck. But Talisi Fawanga is, I view Joe Alt as don't miss. I view Olu as don't miss. I think Fawanga is the only other tackle I view as near as a surefire starting tackle in this league. And I could see him ultimately being the best tackle out of this draft class. But yeah, I mean, Fawanga is a stud, in my opinion.
And another thing about this particular comp is that Michael Myers, you don't really see him move all that often. He's like 30 feet in the distance, and then the next camera shot, he's right up on you. Like, you don't see him. You don't see how quickly he moves. He's just kind of there all of a sudden. And I think that's a lot of Fuanga's game as well, is like you just blink and he's somewhere else, but he doesn't really look like he's moving all that fast. Yeah,
dude is and I think he's done that through this pre-draft process too. He started in that big grouping of maybe borderline first round picks, and then we hop into the Senior Bowl, and now he's talked about as maybe OT1 by a couple of different analysts out there, and it's just a precedent to his game and how he carries himself. And it sounds like the interviews have been great as well. So Fawanga is a guy that you have to keep your eye on. Great dude. And then we talked about Zach Frazier earlier as well. Great center out of West Virginia. And I don't think he's talked about enough. It's him and JPJ, but it's pretty set in stone that JPJ is center 1 and he's center 2. And then there's a great decline after that. But I think Frazier is a lot closer to Jackson Powers Johnson than a lot of people have talked about. But the red turtle shell, I want to know what you were trying to get the point across with the red turtle shell.
Yeah, I mean, you point Zach Frazier at a target, you fire, and he eliminates that target. I mean, plain and simple. Like, it's wild. He was one of my favorite watches. I watched the Penn State game recently and did a little write-up on it. That is something special when you just know that on 4th and 1, you can line up behind your center, up the middle, and just run at will. And they were able to do that even late in that game when it got away from them and there was no chance that they were gonna win the game. They were still out there fighting and scrapping, and it was one of the coolest things that I've watched this draft cycle, because Frazier just sets the tone. And I'm just watching it like there's no way they're going to win this game, and he is still out there beating people's ass. Like, it is awesome to watch. And so for me, I think Zach Frazier, if he didn't have the injury concerns, which, by the way, for him to get out there and already like running drills at the combine and all that stuff after what happened to him is just amazing. So I think if he didn't have those concerns, I think he would be pushing Jackson Powers Johnson a little bit more for that top center spot in this draft. He is particularly efficient as a run blocker, but I think he's kind of another guy that kind of gets miscast. You call him a run blocker, feisty, scrappy guy, and that's kind of the end of the eval. It just gets ingrained into draft media and fans' minds. But if you watch him move, he's a good mover. I think there are some issues in pass protection, but it's not like he's completely incapable of pass protecting. I like him a lot, and I think top of the second would be where I'd expect him to go. I think teams are going to covet his mindset, physicality, aggression, and the leverage and strength that he plays with. And if he hits you, you're totally wiping out, just like the red shell from Mario Kart.
No, we're talking grip strength. I think Frazier definitely up there with everybody in this class.
Mhm.
But those were 6 great comps. And if you guys
Thank
are
you.
still with us over on YouTube, all socials, whatever, I saw us hit 700 viewers out there, which is by far our record. Make sure head over to YouTube, subscribe. We do this every Thursday, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time, and we end every show with a draft. And I'm not talking NFL draft. We're talking today NFL team name death match, battle royale. We're going to go snake draft style, Stoney, Jonathan, and then me, and then we'll go in reverse order. We're going to pick 4 teams. So there's 32 picks out there you can choose from. And what we're alluding to on this is if I was to say I'm trying to think of somebody that wouldn't be on a draft board, the Cardinals and the Eagles. Would the Eagle devour the Cardinal? Yes, that's what we're looking for here. So we're going to wrap the show up with this, and we're starting with you, Stoney. Who is the 101 in this draft?
I think it has to be the Titan. I think it has to be the Titan. I mean, just the most powerful being in the universe. I don't know what else in this field could potentially challenge one. I know there's, a big uprising and all that, take down the Titans and all that, but no, it's just when you're looking at this pool, I think the Titan pretty easily clears.
Well, if the Titan is poorly run, then maybe some of these other entities have a chance.
Fair enough.
There's going to be a buck uprising if you get what I'm catching. But I think that's the clear 101, and I think there's a clear 102 as well. Where are we going, Jonathan?
You think there's a clear 102, but I'm going to shake it up because my first pick is going to be the Chargers.
Okay.
Like a lightning bolt.
Okay.
I mean, you're cooking. I'll cook a giant with a lightning bolt. You know what I'm saying? So all I'm saying is that if David had a lightning bolt as opposed to a slingshot, then maybe,
I mean, Zeus brought down the Titans, alludedly.
That's true.
What is Zeus's weapon of choice? The lightning bolt. So I don't mind that at all. Actually, wasn't on my board. Just I thought about it and I looked at it and I was like, I honestly don't know what a charger is. Is it lightning? And
it's like a charging block, and I'm just way off base.
Yeah. So you alluded to it. I got back-to-back picks here. The first one I think is fairly easy for me, and that's going to be the Giants. And I could see this going a couple different ways. I think it is a tier below probably the Titans, just because the Giants, if I see a 9-foot tall man, I'm going to call that guy a giant. But ultimately, I think he's probably getting stomped by a lot of these big cats that I'm sure we're going to see later in the draft. But if we're talking like Elder Scrolls Skyrim, hit you with a boulder, send you into oblivion, I can see that going a couple different ways. Exactly.
Yeah. Not like a Wimby. Like Wimby would get cooked by a Bengal. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. Mythical.
And then with the next pick, I think this is really the last of a tier, and then we hop into these other ones. And that's going to be the Jets, the New York Jets. If I'm flying around, I'm dropping bombs, I'm sending missiles. We're bringing technologically to the next level with these picks. And then I think the Giants and the Jets, if I pair them together, maybe I can just take out maybe one of those top 2 picks that you guys took. Maybe. I don't know how we're defeating lightning or a storm. I don't know what you win with that, but maybe we can do that. But back to you, Jonathan. Who are we taking with the second pick?
So I'm glad I'm in this position because this is interesting, right? Like you could go like one of these ferocious jungle cats, right? But I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go the Joe Rogan direction, and I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears. Yep. Big old grizzly bear just gets his hands on one of those cats and just gets rid of them. So Bears.
Man, I was thinking I was thinking I was going to get the bear. I was going to pull the exact same rationale, like the bear's the apex predator. And
So I think we all had the Bears as maybe our first animal pick, because I personally did as well.
Like if the grizzly bear is there at 38, the Titans should just take a grizzly bear at 38 because, value.
Have you seen those polar bear videos where the guys are like locked in the cage in the Arctic? These dudes are destroyers. They are on a mission, and it is to eat you. That's all. That's the one thought process. And then you can see all the other videos where they're by themselves swimming in the freezing cold temps and stuff. So they can be cute, but they're also destroyers. So
if there's a cat on you, like if there's a cat on you really quick, like, you could poke it in the eye or do something that might like disinterest it, right? And then it's like gone. A bear, dude, you could rip a bear's arm off and it's going full tilt on you. So it's just easy.
Man, Chef Ran ruined my joke. I was gonna go cowboy. Give me a cowboy with a shotgun, and we're good to go. So
when I thought about that with the Bears and all that, I was like, man, if I personally had a gun and a bear is running at me at full bore, I don't think I'm stopping it. I was like, maybe if I have a big enough gun, but I was like, I'm taking one shot and then it's got me. It might die afterwards, but it's probably taking me out. This is kind of where I was alluding to. But then we got Cowboys with the second pick. Who are we going with the third?
I'm gonna give me the Panthers, and I'm gonna have my cowboy riding the Panther into battle with the Titan.
Love it.
It's okay,
All
Chef
right.
Man. Thank you for the support. You can have one of my jokes every once in a while.
All right, Jonathan. We got the Chargers and the Bears. Who we taking with the third?
This is a tough one because it's like, do you take the Texan because are they the same as a Cowboy? Like,
there you go.
Get in the gunfight. I guess that's what I'm going with. I'm gonna go with the Texan. Let's get some firepower. It's just a guy from Texas. It's not even like a
yeah. You got
a guy
Jerry
from Texas.
Jones.
It's like Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
An unarmed guy from Texas. It's just a guy from Texas.
All right. So I got my back-to-back picks here to end the draft for myself. And still lots of big cats out on the board. And I'm going to take one. And I think it's out of the big cats, probably my favorite. And that's going to be the Bengal. The Bengal Tiger. I think it's the next one after the Bears, in my opinion. There's a couple other ways you could have gone, and I don't mind those either. But we're going Giants, Jets, Bengals. And then we're going to end it with the Commanders. I got to get my guns. And it might just be a flintlock pistol for all I know. But a gun's a guns, and still can kind of tear through you. So I'm ending mine with Giants, Jets, Bengals, Commanders. And we're going back to you, Jonathan, for your last pick.
Man. I could just do something funny. And you know what? Taking a dolphin might be good in case we have a little bit of an aquatic battle. There's nothing in the water yet. Now, I think I'm just going to, you know what? Shout out to my 4-year-old son. He's been watching a show called Wild Kratts, which is basically the guys from Zaboomafoo, if you remember that show from back in the day. And I'm going to go, it ties in, I promise. I'm going to go with the Jaguars because I recently learned that the Jaguar is the most aquatic of all jungle cats. So I get my land and water guy. I'm going to go with Jaguars.
I don't mind that. At all. All right, Stone. You got your last one to end the draft. You got Titans, Cowboys, Panthers, and blank. Where are we going with the last one?
I'm going to go Vikings on this one. Pretty tough.
On my board.
Tough, brutal warriors, but they're also highly organized in battle and have the mean streak. So you know what? They're gonna add some grit to my squad here a little bit.
Love it. Well,
Yeah, we
that
got
wraps
crushed
up
by
the draft.
Stoney today, I think.
Yeah, I think Stoney's got it, but we'll see in the comments. Me and Jonathan have won every draft so far. B Will bets with his heart, and I love it. But the fans have not liked it so far, and I think this is episode 6. So just reviewing the team. Stoney's got the Titans, the Cowboys, the Panthers, the Vikings. Jonathan went Chargers, Bears, Texans, and Jags. I went Giants, Jets, Bengals, and Commanders. We're going to be posting this on socials tomorrow. Make sure you go vote for your favorite team. Comment section has been blowing up today, and this is by far the biggest show we've had live. Over 800 people checking us out. Make sure you go over to YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. We're trying to build this thing up. Just some names out there that weren't drafted that I did have on my list. We got the big 3, very similar in my opinions, being the Buccaneers, Vikings, and Raiders. I think it was Chef Ran alluded to it in the comments. No, it was ZK. The Raiders and Bucks, they got cannons. They ain't got guns. They got cannons, which I don't mind that at all. So those maybe a little slept on. And then the two other Wildcats out there, the Lions, which I thought was going to be drafted, and the Panthers. So two big names. But go ahead.
I was just going to say Lions, like, they just don't, I feel like they're kind of like lazy almost. Like they're just like, just kind of lounging around, whatever. Like you see animals fighting lions and they're kind of just like, okay, cool, whatever. Like they just don't care. So
I'll say this, if I may, if we're having an NFL mascot death match tournament, I feel really bad for the dude that just like works in a cheese factory and packs up cheese, because it's going to be over quick for that guy.
Yep. It'll be real bad, real fast. But that's going to wrap up our show today, guys. Thanks for checking us out. We love everybody that's in the comments. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next week. And thank you, Stoney, for joining us today. Make sure you go follow him on all socials, at Stoney Keeley, at SoBros Network. But we love you guys. Big hugs and tiny kisses. Peace.